Since I first started learning how to draw 9 months ago, I had my sights set on one goal, and that goal hasn't changed. I want to draw stylized anime characters. And I failed. Miserably. But as I kept drawing, things started looking up and I was finally beginning to draw faces I was satisfied with. But then, I discovered something horrifying. You see, every face I've drawn so far was a lie. Let me demonstrate what I mean. So the way I constructed my head is something like this. Just ignore the messy sketches for a sec and take a look at what lies beneath the underlying structures and the way I place my facial features. Looking at it closely, none of this actually makes sense. I wasn't properly drawing heads, I was pretending to draw them. And after drawing and finishing many illustrations over the past couple of months, I noticed there was a common trend. My characters' faces are not improving at all. I finally realized I was done drawing aimlessly and playing pretend with my drawings. I want them to look appealing like these. In order to get there, I had to actually learn how to draw heads. So the past few months of my drawing process looks like this. I will browse Pinterest or references and poses I liked, and select an anime character I like to draw. Then I will sketch, line, and color my illustration. This whole process from start to finish used to take over 26 hours, but as I got more and more comfortable with my routine, I was able to cut these hours down by 10. By looking at my past work, I realized all the faces I've drawn lacked structure. And the scary part is, I don't even understand why. Let me show you how I draw faces right now. I first start with a circle and put a cross in the middle, and connect the jaw. For facial features like the eyes, nose, and mouth, I will usually just guess where they go. Reviewing some of my old drawings, I can't help but cringe at how bad these are, and how I was content drawing like this. Just look at how messed up my faces are in a couple of these sketches. I knew I was just building bad habits, but this is how I've always done it, until today. Getting rid of my horrible habits was tough. Back when I first started drawing, my main focus was to draw pretty anime waifus, and to do it in 30 days. And when your only goal is to make things look good fast, you end up starting to chase results instead of the basics. Since I barely had time to learn the fundamentals, I can say this was honestly my first time sitting down and really studying how the head actually looks like. After doing a bit of research, I found out that there are actually many different ways to draw a head. I personally started with the Loomis method because that's what everyone said to start with. At first, drawing this was actually painful. I wasn't used to drawing something and not finishing the whole thing. Anyways, I drew my first Loomis head and quickly noticed something confusing. You see the second circle? What is it? I'm being dead serious. I quickly went back and looked at some of my past sketches and realized I actually used to draw the second circle. So at some point, I must have learned it, but somewhere along the way, I completely abandoned it. The question is, at what point did I stray from this path? You see, in order to draw heads in different angles, this second circle is really important because it indicates where the flattened side plane of the head is located. I always had trouble drawing heads in a 3/4 angle, and now I know why. And thanks to drawing my first Loomis head, I found out about this major mistake. It's pretty embarrassing to admit, but better late than never, right? Anyways, after many Loomis heads later, I started getting the hang of where to place the facial features thanks to the construction lines, but there was a problem. I still didn't fully understand the 3D structure of the head. And to fix that, I also drew asaro heads to get an understanding of how the planes of the faces looks like. Since the human head is complex, I felt like asaro heads really helped me identify the planes and shapes of the head in detail. For the first time in my drawing journey, I felt like I was learning something. Trust me when I say this, I really hate learning fundamentals. I even came up with my own way of learning how to draw faces by just drawing the same character over and over again. Back when I first started drawing, I did practice a little bit of the basics, but I quickly grew bored of them. I always thought since I'm drawing anime style, how is drawing realism gonna help at all? That's why I tried my hardest to avoid them like the plague, and went right into drawing anime. But right now, I was so inspired, I even started drawing a skull. Anyways, after all those head studies, it's time to start drawing from references. For the first time in my drawing journey, I decided I was gonna draw real human faces. Even though I had no interest in drawing realism, it was important to study and draw real people because their faces are more defined, which forces me to think 3D. This means I can at least get a basic understanding of how the head works. However, I had one problem. Since I started drawing 9 months ago, I had only drawn anime style characters. So as you can see, I was completely lost on how to get started. I browsed for reference photos on Pinterest and Google Images, but it was still hard to put together everything on my own. Like, where do I begin? Thankfully, this is where a platform like Skillshare comes in, who are kind enough to sponsor this video. Getting started in learning a new drawing technique or style can be challenging, which in my case is not knowing where to begin or what to focus on. Skillshare makes this process way easier. The platform allows you to pick the skills you want to learn because it provides a wide range of categories you're interested in, like art and illustration. By taking a portrait drawing class, I was able to follow a detailed lesson plan that guided me through to drawing my first face in a different style. One specific detail that I learned in one of the classes was how to pick a reference photo. Usually I go on Pinterest and find whatever pose reference that looks appealing, but in this class, I learned that finding references with good lighting is actually really important. This is just one of many small details that I would never have learned by myself, and thanks to Skillshare, I was able to draw these myself and actually understood what I was doing. If you are interested and want to give this a try, make sure to take advantage of my unique link in the description or the pinned comment, or scan the QR code on the screen, because the first 500 people that use the link will get a month of Skillshare for free, plus an additional 20% off their first payment. So after drawing a bunch of portraits, it's finally time to take the knowledge I've gained and move on to what I really want to draw. Before I started drawing my final piece, I wanted to first study how other artists drew their faces, so I picked these illustrations from artists I really liked and did a style study based on their work. The first one is from Huari. Here's the art that I'm gonna study from. When I was drawing this, I paid extra attention to how the artist constructed the overall shape of the head. Since this particular illustration is from a 3/4 angle, the second circle I learned about while studying the Loomis head really came in to save the day. I'll just say this right now. If I hadn't done the Loomis head studies, I don't think my art would look anywhere near Huari's art. I remembered in the past I said this. Looking back at a couple of my drawings, I tend to draw the character's head bigger than normal. Now I understand why. Without proper understanding of the facial structure and the basic head anatomy, there's just so many different ways you can screw up. Since my foundation was weak, I couldn't build anything on top of it. Just looking at the differences on how I used to draw my sketches and how I draw them now, you can see massive adjustments I made. Not only that, there's also a different mindset I begin to understand why people actually do these studies. In my past studies, I drew the art because I wanted to learn something, like maybe improve my shading or imitate an artist just because I like how the art looked. With this mindset, oftentimes I'm left with a pretty art after I finish basically copying everything I see, but I was left more confused than when I first started. And I think I understand why now. I was mostly copying what I saw and not fully understanding why the artist drew the way they did. While doing a style study, you have to try and get into the artist's mind and ask yourself why did the artist make this certain decision and how they are implementing these techniques. It's kind of like picking the artist's brain. I'm trying to analyze their thought process, not just imitate their brush strokes. Anyways, since this is just a style study mostly for the face, I only colored and shaded the face and eyes, while leaving the hair and clothes flat. For me personally, it's kinda easy to go overboard and basically finish the whole illustration just for the heck of it. But this is not what an art study is about. It was here that I realized that I made a pretty big mistake. Let me show you. I'll put my study on the left and Huari's original on the right. Right away, I noticed the character's gaze from the original is looking at the camera, while my study here had her looking straight off to the side. The mistake I made was placing the character's right iris a bit too far to the right. Just a subtle mistake can change the whole dynamic element of the art. And if I had gotten preoccupied with finishing the whole piece instead of analyzing the art, who knows if I would have caught the mistake or not. The next style study is from Kappe, and I don't really have to explain why I like her art. Her style is very eye-catching, and the character's dynamic facial expressions just brings the art to life. So while studying this art, I wanted to capture the character's expressions and feelings. One thing I forgot to mention, during my fundamental studies, the idea of the shape of a head being a spear and not just a circle really drives home what to take away from this video. While the concept might sound simple, it has basically made it way easier for me to draw hair. This realization hit me hard because I remembered my first attempts at drawing hair, and it's all the way back on day 4 of my drawing journey. I was so confused on why my hair all looked like it is. Even in some of my recent drawings, the hair just looked really unnatural. If I explain it in simple terms, it's like placing a wig on top of a bald head instead of making hair flow on a head. And since I can now visualize the shape of a head, Drawing the hair is way easier than I thought. And then again, I didn't fully complete the illustration. I just added some flat and detailed the essentials. I really like Kape's shading techniques, especially how she details the face. There's this soft but confident touch to it that makes her work feel alive. After finishing this art study, I realized my line confidence really improved a lot. My lines are way sharper and cleaner and seems to have a purpose, something I lacked before. Comparing my line art from an art I drew just a week before the challenge, the difference was night and day, and I think I figured out why now. The improvement wasn't in the line art itself, it was what lies beneath it. These are the two sketches I drew. The one on the left have a bunch of messy scribbles and chicken scratches, while the one on the right looks more structured and confident. Just being able to sketch with a purpose and confidence evolved my line art, and you can see an obvious result from it. Just by doing these two art studies, I feel like my art has improved more than the past 200 days of me drawing and finishing every illustration I've done. So now it's finally time to put everything I learned to the test and see if all those days of boring head studies have actually paid off. To find out, I will be drawing Marin again, the character I drew back on day 100 of my drawing journey. Back when I finished this art, I was pretty damn proud, but looking at this now, I feel like I can draw a better face. The most challenging part of this piece was definitely stylizing my art. Since my fundamental studies were based on realism, I had to switch gears and figure out how to convert realistic facial features into a stylized version. Needless to say, I struggled quite a bit. After about an hour of trial and error, I finally got a proportion that felt right, and I started to incorporate elements from both Huari and Kape into my art. Since this is my final artwork for the video, I tried really hard making sure that this was the best face I've drawn so far, and my line art came out like this. I'm honestly stunned by how well my line art came out. I did highlight the shadows and everything, but the result was way better than I expected. The coloring process is the same as usual. I put in a flat and started detailing the eyes. I don't know what is it about Marin's eyes, but I always had trouble getting it to look right. I think I spent an hour working on coloring her eyes alone. I used a mix of both Huari's and Kape's shading techniques for the skin, and it came out really nice. And this is how my art came out. Shading the hair and clothes is something I definitely need to brush up on, but overall, I was really proud of what I drew. Now I know, in the past, I had my priorities wrong. I was way too fixated on completing an artwork, and more drawings doesn't mean guaranteed improvement. I needed to get out of my comfort zone of aimlessly drawing and fix things from the ground up. If I compare this art of Marin to the art I drew on day 100, I'm truly speechless on how good it turned out. The difference really is night and day. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing to the channel, or you'll be subjected to drawing 100 Loomis heads a day like me.